In episode 1, we speak with Eddie about childhood memories, daily rhythms, hidden quirks, and the quiet philosophies that shaped Edward Bowen, the man behind the canvas.
So, thanks for doing this. We'll start off with some basic questions. Could you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and which primary school helped shape those early years?
Born in Arima. Father was a doctor. Mom was his wife. I went to a little school down in Arima. I went to school firstly when I was about 3. They sent me early. And I distinctly remember that kindergarten. I remember scribbling a lot. And then when I was about 4 or 5, I went to St. Monica's in Pembroke Street.
Right.
My family used to own the building actually, and the nuns there. It was an all right place for a couple of years, and then I got exiled to England to a boarding school. But I have a distinct memory at St. Monica's of doing a picture of a ship. Yeah, it's a very distinct memory, and I remember the teacher, Miss Dumbbell, yeah, going off about this ship, and I thought, well, okay. But I always liked it, And then I went to England to boarding school, and the first thing I remember was going to the art room. It was a kind of like old country place, country manor down in country. And the art room was in a disused barn, converted barn.
Right.
And I remember that very well, and I remember that I wanted to be there, and that the rest of the schooling was what they, that Supertramp song, they send you away to be respectable, whatever. That's what they did. Right. But the art room was I don't know if it was an oasis, but it was a very welcoming space, and I don't remember doing anything in there except I liked it for that 3 years. And then I went to the big boarding school, and that had an even better art room, and I remember that was like fucking heaven.
Right.
And I had the art teacher there with me. He was my teacher for that 6 years there, from the age of 10 to 17, 16, 17. And then I went straight to art school after that experience, because when it came to O-levels, I remember speaking to the teacher one day after the first day at O-level. He was talking about atomic theory, and after the class I went to him and I said, well, you've explained that everything is about atoms and the physics of it and all that kind of thing. And I said, well, if everything's made of atoms, there's really not that much more for me to know, is there? And he kind of looks at me like that, sideways. I said, would you mind if I don't do any more physics and go into the art room instead? And it was kind of unprecedented for a kid to kind of say that, to change the curriculum. And he said, well, let me talk to the art teacher. And the art teacher didn't mind a shit.
Right.
So next thing you know, I gave up physics. 14 O-levels, so one less isn't gonna hurt anybody. So I ended up in the art room, and from there I was in there, if you could say, double time from then on.
Okay.
And then I went to art school straight away. I was 17.
Serious art then.
Yeah, it was in me, so I just kind of decided to follow it.
Great. That's interesting. So, by the way, what did mommy and daddy say about this?
They didn't have anything to say. They weren't around. No, well, I got sent away, right? And they left me to my own devices, because boarding school, 4,000 miles away.
Right.
I said, well, if you sent me, I would do what I do.
Right.
And at A-level, all my buddies were going towards Oxbridge and this and that and the other, and I did not want to go to a university as such, because when I was asked by the interviewee, why are you coming to art, I said, because I don't want to do somebody else's work. I don't want to. The other thing was English literature, history of art. I was always in that. I said, I don't want to spend the next 3-4 years reading books. You know, I could do that myself. So I went to art school.
Okay. Would you describe yourself as an early bird or a night owl?
Neither.
Neither.
These days I get up very early because I don't sleep well. And I don't do all-nighters, never have. I can't handle that. So I do my work during the day. When the time is free, I do my work in between living. And I come from a real estate family, so when I came back from art school, I got involved in my family's business. And reorganized it, took it down basically,
Right.
And split it between 6 kids. Considerable assets. And I was the unlikely new manager, and still am, of the remainder of the company.
Okay.
They didn't really expect the artist in the backyard to kind of like, well, basically kind of tell them, you know, I basically told them, I think you're doing shit. And there was some corruption.
Okay.
And I decided to address it. And
Right.
I went to 7 or 8 lawyers and ended up with one. You remember a guy called Victor Nunez?
Yes.
Yeah, he was an old friend of mine, and went by him, and there began a process of taking down an old colonial family business. I was not popular, but that's what I had to do.
But it worked out.
It worked out. My siblings got a fair deal, and so did I,
Right.
which is where I am now.
Right. Well, I mean, they could have their thoughts about it, but as you said, if they had a fair deal, I don't think they could
Well,
grudge you that.
you know, in art school, I mean, in the mid-'80s, in England, there was a new thing where artists, part of the informal education of artists and the word was the artists started wearing suits. They started looking sharp instead of being grungy. And the word was, you know, if you don't organize your business, it's very difficult to make art. You had to get somebody to either sponsor you, or you're perpetually running behind a sponsor. So you better get some business savvy in your tail and learn to apply it. And it's always going to be a balance between what you love to do and what you think you have to do.
Right.
So sometimes I don't work in my studio for a few weeks. But most of the time I'm trying to organize the time so I can get into the studio to get those stretches. But what happens is I end up working 3-4 hours a day, 5 hours a day. But I'll get the hours in during the week as I can.
Right.
But you have to get the hours in. You have to put the hours in. I mean, I'm not in the way like Jackie is more traditional. I manage an estate up on the North Coast there when I'm not doing this.
Okay.
220 acres and a whole fucking village. So that's part of my work.
Well,
That's what comes down with the family, you know?
yeah.
So, you know, it's you know, when you get handed a blessing like that, it's to take it, you know?
Yes, for sure.
You know, and I'm gonna, you know, just throw your hands up in there and talk about, you know, art and, you know, all that shit, you know, but, you know, you gotta live.
Precisely. Something a little different. Could you share with us a little about your taste in music?
It's wide-ranging and eclectic. I tend not to put too much emphasis on it because I'm not that well schooled, to be honest with you. But if there's a nice tune playing, I can normally identify a hit, though. But I'll listen to anything once it's got a groove. I don't like a lot of the modern last music in the last 10 years. I mean, Beyonce is boring, you know, Justin Bieber. But you know, music from the 80s, 70s, 60s, even a lot of music from the 90s. A lot of it has narrative and story.
Yeah.
And
soul.
Yeah, and there's some musicians, you know. It's not studio mixing and that kind of thing and what you're sampling. you know, I mean, I still listen to a little Bob Dylan when I'm in the gym. And when I'm working, yeah, I used to be, Bob Marley was a big background noise for me for a lot of years.
Okay.
But I'm not interested in illustrating the contemporary stories and the how can you say, the themes in music about resistance and, you know, sorrow and all. I'm not interested in that. I'm not. I like the noise.
Right.
I like that kind of thing in the background, you know. It's like a good conversation.
Right.
You know, nothing I can really control, but if it's got a kind of a groove, I can let the groove happen.
Okay.
But I mean, a lot of times when I'm drawing, for example, I'll put my phone on and do a playlist, and I'll just forget about it.
Okay.
You know, normally it's the same thing because, and then I'll put the timer on because I'm only working for like an hour and a half, and then I'll stop. But a lot of the times I'm listening to a lot of the, you know, the internet's great, you know, the podcasts and, of course, things about health. As you get older, it becomes a topic.
Yeah.
Health, Donald Trump. You know, that's a whole scene, you know. So occasionally I just kind of tune into that kind of nonsense, you know.
Okay.
There's so much in that phenomena. But it's difficult to kind of listen to the text of that. Much easier to listen to the music.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I learned something new about it just now, about your estate happenings. But what is something about you that people might be surprised to learn?
I think, honestly, I come across as being perhaps amenable and friendly most of the time. And then there's a side of me that is, I think, quite ruthless. When you go to a boarding school at the age of 7, it's not unlike a military school.
Right.
Your life is regimented for the next 10 years. You got to put the tie on straight. You know, you speak English. You have to hold yourself with a certain kind of decorum, if you like. Not something that the average kind of like West Indian child would be. They're not under that kind of manners.
Okay.
That stuck with me. I'm a bit of a bastard, really. No, to be honest, I there's a certain point at which I think nonsense is nonsense, and you know, I got some kind of like really powerful intellectual friends there.
Right.
I mean, and they're kind of ruthless too. That world is kind of ruthless.
You call a spade a spade.
Yeah, yeah, and people who kind of like use their nut a lot.
Right.
Tend to have to make tougher decisions about how they deal. So uncompromising.
Okay. That's in a word.
In a word, yeah.
That's.
It's very useful.
I would imagine.
It's very useful. And people don't associate that with artists. They associate not uncompromising, but uncontrollable, perhaps, over emotional, which is content towards being uncompromising as well, because it's an extreme state.
Okay.
But you see, the artistic kind of like, you know, indulgence, emotional indulgence, it goes nowhere apart from being quite self-destructive. And I've seen that with many creative people.
Yeah.
That, you know, well, cool yourself there. You know, I mean, oh gosh, you know, we've heard the romantic story for the last 300 years of enlightenment, you know. I mean, give me a break, it's boring shit.
Right.
You know, the whole creativity and I have to do this and love and passion, fuck it, it's boring. You know, it doesn't work most of the time.
Okay.
You can't work when you're impassioned, you have to be quite cool.
So, you know, one of the things that, you know, I have a sense of you is that your work is you, and you're not about making statements. Is that an accurate statement?
It's very accurate, and I've been writing. I've had to rewrite my, artists are called upon to write a personal statement every so often. Well, I'm not into gender. I'm not into history. I'm not into social activism. I'm not into wailing and moaning about the ills of life and colonialism and history, because I find that there's a lot of people who do that very well already. And I come from that. I come from an old white Trinidad family, colonial state and all that kind of thing.
Right.
I don't think I need to apologize about it or talk about it, because I don't, when I took my family to task, I was also aware that I was taking apart some kind of, some of that colonial shit.
Mm-hmm.
I had an auntie who was more white than white, for Christ's sake. Tea at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and and all that. I mean, and Englishness, and so I'm really not interested in the idea of art as resistance to the ills of society.
Okay.
Art can change impressions, it can change people's minds, it can change lives. But to begin with, it is always about the individual and their personal drive. And you can be artistic about just about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the ills of history have been, for example, Earl Lovelace recently is 90. He's been writing about stuff, and Caribbean literature has been really sort of exploded that in the last 50 years. But as an artist, I find that there's a tremendous amount of beauty in the confusion of daily life.
Yes.
There's a lot of humor in Trinidad life. There's a lot of unexpected beauty.
For sure.
Unexpected harmonies. That's what I'm after. I don't have anything. I don't want to spend my life complaining, and kind of rallying against, dead white people, and the big banks and the 1%. I mean, what. Yeah, I don't have any axes to grind as such with my work.
So your art is just an expression of you.
Well, I don't know that I actually have anything to express, to be honest with you. Okay. I mean, I feel more of the time I'm like a sponge. I'm here, and I'm just I'm trying to soak it up, because there's a lot to soak up.
Yeah, but you soak up, but you put out.
Yeah, and the discipline is to put it out, Me, I don't know where me is in all of that.
But then aren't you like
a conduit?
A conduit. But there has to be some sort of transformation of what you take in to what you put out.
I think that happens up here.
Right.
And I think that you have to allow that to happen, or else your ego is powering what you're putting out.
Right.
And the ego can get in the way.